All right, reading a little Resurrecting Jesus, Adyashanti. Here's a practice for you. So if you're meditating on a wrathful deity of great energy and you meditate on it very deeply, it will start to evoke that reality, that energy within you. A wrathful deity. It may be an energy that makes you very uncomfortable, like wrath is wont to do. It may bring up unresolved issues in your life. Sounds like psychoanalysis, but okay. Issues that have to do with that particular inner energy field, that psychological and spiritual force, evoked through the contemplation of the deity. All right, I understand what he's saying. There's a resonance from that energy that may find like energy within you, in your memories, in your being. This can be a very powerful practice because it scours the depths of the unconscious, and in doing so, it brings to light the very best in you, and also the darkest, most horrific parts of your nature. Again, a little bit like psychoanalysis, but also reminds me of Jung and the shadow side of our souls. Because it's only when we can see all of ourselves, the light and the shadow, the good and the bad, that we can embody these energies so they're no longer frightening and in possession of us. Wow. I sure would like to do that. Hot damn. What was that again? What do we have to do? What is it we got to do? See all of ourselves, the light and the shadow, the good and the bad. See the good. Well, that's easy. We see the good in ourselves pretty readily. See the bad. Yeah, there are those of us who see the bad pretty readily too. And there are those who don't. And if you're weak on either side, you've got both. You should probably brush up on the weak side and try to balance that out a bit. So that we can embody these energies so they're no longer frightening or in possession of us. Well, right, we don't want to be frightened by things. And we certainly don't want them to be in possession of us, so we would like to embody these energies. Well, I think I see that too. We're bigger than that. Those are pieces of us. We don't deny that they're there, but they are under our control and we are responsible for them, and that means sometimes we're guilty. Oh shit. So tonight we'll talk a little bit about guilt. Oh shit. You. I always like it when he's just looking over my shoulder. I can see him there in my periphery. Guilt. Lovely. Lovely guilt. Let's just take a random Googled quote. Indeed, justice and mercy are two sides of the same coin we call love. Okay. Well, I can even see that in connection to Adyashanti looking into the face of wrathfulness and actually finding some value. In fact, Adya goes on to say that if we can embody these things, this wrath, this guilt, without fear, we can actually see through them to the other side where there is clarity and love. Ajah is hugely ambitious and quite the optimist at times. But let's say that might be in there if you could get to it. Indeed, justice and mercy are two sides of the same coin that we call love. And this is also what we call God, justice and mercy. And both those qualities exist, and in fact are somewhat mutually dependent in their existence. Let's go on with another thought. A definition of God is that God is the source of judgment, mercy, and guilt. So we get all of these things. None of them is invalid, and yet none of them cancels out the other. So what about the guilt? It follows you around. Sometimes it swells up, and when it does, it can be like an abyss. It's an abyss. There's no bottom to it. There's no way to pay the price. There's no way to redemption. It yawns before us. But maybe, without letting it go to our heads, we can make a little distinction. Let's distinguish between, let's say, the guilt and shame, simple shame. Nietzsche thought that shame was an uncomplicated judgment of oneself before one's peers, and a mark of a noble constitution. So humility is still a high value, and shame is a function of humility, and we need shame to keep us able to be humble if that's what we want. Guilt, on the other hand, he saw as an artificial inflation of one's own importance. Serving only as an excuse to be cowardly and withdraw from life's natural challenge. And we're back to the grit and gumption side of things, but this guilt thing, as much as it's going to show up, does not have the power to stop me. And I can go forward, and it can show me the yawning pit of hell, and yet my experience has been that I nevertheless go forward. I haven't fallen into the pit. It's like the dream where you're falling, but you never hit the ground. The dream of the open pit and the agony of unforgiveness has not manifested. What has manifested is me getting up and facing the next 10 minutes and saying, I shall do this. And while I'm at it, this gets to be the wind in my sails. Not only am I not going to stand there paralyzed in fear forever at the yawning pit, but in fact, I'm going to use the fact that I really do have that threat coming around from time to time to inspire me to keep busy while I can, doing what I can, because no, I can't go back and remake the past. But what I can do is do a better job in the future. Sounds pretty simple. Sounds rather trite. But there you go. Sometimes that's what it is. So, in order not to let this do any more harm than has already been done, I shall move forward. And what's more, if I really want to get scared, I will consider the fact that everything I did that caused the guilt is something that I really own. I did do that. That's part of who I am and what I was and what I did. And thank God there's forgiveness equally with judgment, because the judgment is pretty clear. Although, let's not lose track of the exaggeration of the ego, wherein I think I've caused all this great harm, and in fact, most of my worries have been pretty trivial things. There, I said it. There. See, I said it, and I don't believe it. But it brings to mind the image of like this little 9-year-old kid confessing his sins at the railing in church. And, oh, I repent of my terrible and awful life of sin. And I'm thinking, what has this kid done? What does he think he's done? And what did somebody make him think was that bad? For the most part, everybody has gotten over everything by now. So you need to move on too. And yeah, only I fucked up. God, it's hard to say. It's just really hard to say. So save that for when you really want to scare yourself. In the meantime, let the thing be the wind in your sails that keeps you from doing the same thing again and keeps you moving forward so that you're not suffering the second death of falling prey to the guilt from the thing that's behind you that can't be changed, whether you own it or not. No, not going to let that happen. Not today.